Hey everyone, welcome to week 2 of Code Break Summer 2017. And today we're going to be making an r/place clone using Node.js and Socket.io. So r/place is an April Fool's joke made by Reddit as part of their yearly tradition of making weird social experiments for the Reddit community. This time it was a 1000 by 1000 pixel grid where anyone could place a tile from a palette of 16 colors, but they could only place one every 5 minutes. And this is the final result of it. And we're going to be making one of these, except a lot more simple and not on this largest scale as Reddit's. So our clone is going to end up looking something like this once we're done. It's going to be a 50 by 50 pixel grid with XY inputs instead of pointing and clicking uh, a, a tile on the canvas. And there's going to be no cooldown, so anyone can place tiles as often as they want. So we're going to be using two main technologies for this. We're going to be using Node.js and Socket.io. And these other two, Express and just web pages, those will be like our skeleton. So Node.js is basically often referred to as JavaScript on the server side, although it has many other uses. But for our use, we're going to be using it as a server to hold our canvas. So the benefit of using Node.js is how fast it is and how you can run many concurrent operations on it at once. So for example, you can you can receive many web requests from a bunch of browsers and they'll all run at the same time, rather in a different language. They would run one after another. So it eliminates the problem of having to have like multiple threads and stuff. So Socket.io enables WebSocket communication between the client and the server. So WebSockets are basically HTTP but bidirectional and better. I'll go into more detail later. So we're going to be using Node.js to hold our canvas, host the web page, and to run a Socket.io server. And so Socket.io is going to be part of our Node server. It's going to facilitate the real-time communication between the browser and the server, and it's going to push all the grid colors to all the clients so they know what's on the canvas. So let's take a look at HTTP versus WebSockets. In a normal HTTP connection, we have a one-time connection between the browser and the server. So the browser says, hey, give me this web page or this file or this picture or whatever it wants from the web server. Then the server says, okay, and it either gives you back the file, an error, or whatever it wants to give you. With WebSockets, the client says, hey, I want to connect to you. And the server says, okay, and then it keeps that connection open, and they can freely send messages between each other. We're going to be using this for the client to send a color to the server, and whenever the server receives a color from anyone, it'll push it back to all the clients. So let's create the project. To start, we're going to need a folder to put all of our files in, and then we're going to open up a terminal. I already have a folder up here that contains all my files, which is none of them at this point. And I have this command line open. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to my folder, and I'm going to create index.js. And this is going to hold all of our Node.js code. So I'm going to go ahead and also open this with my text editor so you can see what's going on in here. So here's my index.js file. We're going to leave it empty for now, and we're going to switch back to the command line. So I'm going to go to my projects directory, and here's my index file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a tool that's included with Node.js called npm to create a package file, which basically tells anyone else that wants to install this that you're going to need to have these packages. So we're going to install the two packages that I said earlier, Socket.io and Express. So actually I have to initiate the package first. so it knows that it exists. So I'm just going to press enter at all these prompts, doesn't really matter. And there we go. It created a package.json for us with all this boilerplate info. So I'm going to install these two packages. There we go. So took a while, but that's the only thing that's going to take that long in here. So next, in our text editor, we're going to be defining the package that we just installed. So I'm just going to go through quickly through this. I'm not going to go too into detail of it, but just copy down what I'm doing here. And it's not really important for what we're going to do in the workshop or the concepts that we're going to learn. So I'm just going to skip right through it. But basically all this does is just defines what we are going to use later on. So let me go to here. There we go. So we need something to tell our program, our server, what to, or how many rows and columns that our canvas has. So I'm going to define them now. So our canvas has 50 pixels by 50 pixels. Simple enough. Now, we need somewhere to actually store our canvas. So I'm going to create this array right here, which is going to store all our canvas colors. I'm going to make two simple for loops here. To populate our canvas with default values. So these two for loops here will create 50 arrays inside of the array, and inside of each of those arrays, it's going to create 50 strings that are going to be this default FFF, which is the hex code for white. So our canvas is going to be white by default. So after we're done with that, I'm going to put this here. So what this line does is basically tells our server to serve whatever's in this public directory um, to the browser. So that's going to store our web page. So this line I just wrote is going to take our socket.io instance, which is just IO in this case, and it's going to listen for this connection event. So whenever a browser connects to the server, whatever is inside of this code will run. And this socket is the client that just connected. So we can do socket.emit, socket.on, socket.join. But in this case, we're going to keep it simple, and we're only going to send something to the client once they connect. So I'm going to send an event with a type of canvas, and I'm going to send it the canvas. So whatever's in the canvas at this, whenever they connect, will be sent to them when they connect. So in our web page, we're going to have it send an event called color to the server whenever it wants to set a color on the canvas, so it can update it in this global canvas object. So I'm going to do socket on color. Here's the data it sends. So this data object will store three variables inside of them: row, call, and color. And the row will start at 1 while our array starts at 0. So we're going to subtract 1 from that for each of these. That's why I have that here. And then it's going to set it to data.color, which can be a hex value or an RGB value or whatever you want. So after we're done with that, we need a way of letting all the other clients that are connected know about this change. So for this IO object, which is a socket IO, we can use IO.emit to send an event to every client that's already connected and send it the canvas event like we did up here, except it does it for every single one of them. So I'm going to make our server listen on the port 3000. Forgot I have this. Ooh, transitions. So if I do node index in my command line, it won't do anything, but that's expected. Because if we go to our localhost 3000, which is our local server, we'll say cannot get slash. That means that the server is up and running and there's no errors. If you see that, then you're good at this point. So what we're going to need to do is in this public directory that I created earlier, we're going to need to create a new file called index.html. This will store the web page for our page. I can't type today. There we go. Now I'm going to scaffold this basic web page. It doesn't really matter what it is at this point. Just test. Now, if we refresh, you can see that we have our page here. That's good. And next, we're going to actually be building the canvas that runs our, or we're going to be writing a script that controls the canvas and that tells the server what to do and what to do if the server sends it something. So I'm going to create another folder inside of this public folder called JS and create a file called place.js. And in public, I'm also going to create CSS styles.css. So this is basically what your directory structure should look like right now. So in our web page, we need to define that these scripts actually exist, or the script and the style sheet. So I'm going to say js place.js, and we're actually going to need to include a bit of jQuery, which is an external library. If you heard of it, then that's good for you. And we're also going to need to include our socket.io library that it actually provides for us. So we're going to use socket.io, socket.io.js. What a mouthful. So this is our library that socket.io gives us when it's attached to our server. All we need to do is include it on our page, and then it's aware of socket.io. So I'm also going to link our style sheet. And I'm going to replace this with a controls div and our canvas. I'm going to make it 500 by 500. See, now each pixel is actually going to be represented by 10 pixels by 10 pixels. So that way you can actually see the pixels. So if we refresh our page here, see there's nothing there. That's good. But if we look in our code, we can see that it was actually added. I should probably, there we go. So, next we are going to create this place.js file. So now I'm going to write a little bit of jQuery to say when this document is ready, we want to declare socket as an IO instance. So basically what this line does is it says to our script, hey, connect to the server. That's all it does. Nothing, doesn't do anything when the server is connected. Doesn't do anything like that. And now next, we need to actually get our canvas, which is what we defined here earlier. So here's the ID. I'm going to get it with jQuery, and there's a canvas. Now we can use it later on. So now, what's special about canvases is they're not regular HTML elements. You can do many things with them. But to do something with them, you have to get what's called a context object. So I'm going to name this variable ctx for context. Do canvas.getContext2D. This gets a 2D context and is saying we're not doing anything 3D related with this, so don't try to load WebGL or anything. Just create a 2D canvas that we can draw on. So now we have this socket object, which is our connection to the server. And much like in here, we can use .on to get an event type. So whenever our server sends us this canvas event type, we want to react to it. So we have our canvas that was stored in here now, and it's called canvas data. So I'm going to create a simple for each loop for this canvas data. And I'm going to show you how to draw a row, how to draw, how to draw each pixel in a specified row and column. So do row index. So row actually stores a color, and the row index stores the position. Or the row, sorry, it stores an array full of strings for that row. So what we can do here is inside of this nested for each loop is actually draw inside of the context, which is our canvas. That's a lot of tens. So I just wrote this line and I'll explain what it does. So this one sets the fill style to the color, which is by default FFF. And this one draws a rectangle inside of our canvas with the size of whatever the index is here times 10. So if it were 2, it would be 20. So it would draw at the x position plus 20. So it would be, say if the origin was here, it would be somewhere around here. And it does this for the same for the y position, and it creates a 10 by 10 rectangle. So it creates whatever color this rectangle is, and then it draws it. Simple. So now we need to actually create a controls in here. Let's create some simple HTML-based controls with the minimum being 0 and the maximum being 50, because that's the size of our grid. Give it some names, make a break, make it look pretty. What is typing anyway? And what's cool is that browsers actually have a native color input, so we don't really need to do anything there. We just ask the browser to let the user choose. And we can place color. So this is our simple form. If you know basic HTML, you probably know what all this means. Like, and these other ones are just pretty self-explanatory, like a min is minimum, max maximum. But if you need help with this, you can talk to me on Slack, and I'll help you, because I know this is probably very confusing for the beginners because I'm going so fast. But I'm here to help. So now that we have this form already, we need to tell our script that the form exists. So I'm going to say, when this submit button is clicked, I want to run this code. I want to tell our server, so there's that emit again, which is basically telling our server something, that I want this column I'm looking at my reference code. And this row. So basically, this takes our x coordinate input and it turns it into a number. And it gives that to our server. Same with the row. So color.value, and this gets a value from our color input. So that's our simple submit. And now if I refresh, I'm also going to actually restart the server because we wrote some new code. If we refresh, our canvas is right here. There's nothing in it right now because it's all white. But if we do, for example, like 2312, I don't know, and then choose a random color and then press place color, as you can see, it placed a color here. If we open a new tab, the same color is right there. It even works if you're in like an entirely new window or if you're in an entirely different browser. So if I have two people, oh God, there we go. If we have, pretend these are two people. If I want to do, let's see, 1232 here. Oh, this has a nicer thing. If I want to do this color, I can place it here and it'll appear on all the other ones. So I do 1, this color, it'll appear there. So as you can see, it's very nice and it's very much like r/place. Let's go back to this. There we go. So we already did all this. If you want to extend this project, here are a few ideas for you. You can add point and click tile placing, you can add a cooldown, or you can make the canvas bigger. And now, if you make the canvas bigger, you're going to need to add some sort of zoom function as well. Otherwise, it'll get too complicated. People won't be able to see the entire thing. So, if you have any questions or anything like that, you can contact me. My username is TJ Horner on Slack, and I hope you enjoyed this really quick tutorial and probably very confusing workshop on how to create an r/place clone. And if you have any questions again, I'm here to help.